Holy cow.
Regularly, like clockwork, 120 club head speed.
I would quit my job and get him an agent. I can hit 310 sideways, downwind with a hurricane. No, I gave my clubs to Goodwill.
No. You know, Southwood, 11, the whole 10.
I'm gonna get closer to you and I'll put,
Played that yesterday.
I'm gonna put her.
I just sit here and chart on the score. So he hit driver and then he hit 8-iron.
God.
Yep.
That's a, I follow.
Like
I watch.
600 foot. So.
Like I watched the Masters, the US I mean, I know golf because I grew up loving it, but I quit in college. You know, try to play as an adult twice a year. You can't.
No,
I don't think you can golf and fish. So.
And that's what I did. I have kids golfing, fishing, racquetball. I'm like, golfing.
You going down to your
Yeah. Trying to
Patty, who's that?
My favorite youngest son, Henry.
Your only youngest son? Auntie love it.
What is the additional staffing request?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll get. Give extra copies. Right.
But it don't convert units to contract. So I'm good for that. So right now I have ESU paying that for the training, and I have Scott Hansen paying summer school program. So I end up.
Are you ready?
Everything else coming out of.
Yes, sir.
All right. How do you want to proceed? I think we gave you our revised 7 and 13 revised.
Right. Correct, sir.
Should be.
And what I've done is get this to you. This is 7. Sure that I keep 2 of them. After all that. Kim, if you can save 1 copy.
Thank you, dear.
Save one.
Give them all away.
Done that.
I hope I got the right color choice. Blue.
I'm just looking,
Making sure.
I'm not too sure, Scott Mazer.
So when it comes down to Article 7 and a couple of things, what we wanted to do, if it's highlighted, it was just a point of discussion. I want to make sure that we didn't go too far past it, but we can tentatively agree to the extended workday for state identified schools. The one thing that I did not do in the title that I think should be done is to capitalize the I and the S, since everything else is capitalized. So when it comes down to increase proportionally at their hourly rate, we had agreed to at their hourly rate, but for continuity, it already said increase proportionally, so I just put in commas afterwards. And it means the same thing, just for anyone that was looking for it. Are you in acceptance of that, or how would you like to respond or go through it first?
Hang on. Yeah, let's just go through it.
Okay. For 3A, you'll notice that we do not have any underlined language, which means there's nothing that's there, but we do have a couple of talking points we want to kind of address. First and foremost, that we do have, for example, teachers that are expected to walk through the line with their students. They do not get a duty-free lunch equal to that of their students. So if we are going to agree to the language as it is in the contract, then school sites will have to adhere to equal duty time for lunch, and teachers will no longer have to do that.
Is that elementary?
That's
Elementary,
primarily
middle.
happening in elementary. Yeah, there are some school sites that will use some compensatory time, and it's just for a short period of time, but at the beginning of the year, where, but at the end of the day.
So are we saying that teachers are required to do it the entire year?
Yes. Pre-K, kindergarten, there are certain grade levels where, yes, they're expected to go through the line all the time. Since we can't get to a time certain, we just want to make sure that we're at least protecting what time they do have.
Okay.
Going on to B1, every effort shall be made to ensure at least 4 out of 5. We would like to leave it at 4 out of 5 planning periods we reserve for individual planning time weekly. We understand that there was other language that was proposed. Ultimately, in order to be able to meet the needs of the classroom, the teacher needs to have the time to be able to do the work that needs to be done. From what we're understanding, this is heavily into an elementary area and not necessarily as much of a high school situation, because our high school teachers are a little appalled at what our elementary teachers have to do in terms of planning time and what they don't get. So we want to make sure that 4 out of 5 planning periods reserved, and that means that you've got 1 day to figure it out, or you can do the meetings before or after within the 7.5 hours. But for that time, 4 out of 5. And then at the end, it says that are not considered duty or individual planning time. So just a point of clarification, as far as team and department meetings, even though they're not duty, it's also not individual planning.
There's a team. So it says they are appropriate activities to be carried out during planning time, but they're not considered individual planning.
Right. And just as a kind of point as we go through it, there's a couple of places where we'll look at some things, but I'll just do it now. The contract clearly speaks to the standard workday is 7.5 hours, that there's 5 in a week. And that is what determines the pay rate, and that is what is the workday. But as you kind of look at a lot of things that are in the contract, it's all after hours. So thing is, contract says one thing, respect for time, and what happens is if they don't get the planning during the workday, then it's expected to still be done, and then they take things home. And that impacts their family, their children, those types of things. It's not to say that it won't ever happen. As teachers, they're always going above and beyond, but as a constant, it's we want to make sure that we're respecting and utilizing the time as best as possible.
Okay.
For B, what is it? 3B3, part of the issue, in accordance with section 7.04, we're compensatory time. A lot of times what will happen is it'll say compensatory time and it'll refer what is in 7.04, and principals won't give it because it's not in 7.04. So we just want to make sure if we are in agreement that they're supposed to get compensatory time, let's just make it compensatory time that shall be given. Not necessarily referencing that other article for that section. And then the other part is that direct teachers to substitute or receive students from a split class. It's not always, generally elementary school, it's a lot of splitting of classes that take place. Not necessarily that they're asked to cover for a period or something. And I know that the argument or the rationale has often been, wouldn't you rather have a certified teacher working with the students? Yes, of course. But there's an impact on effectiveness when you're receiving students that are not a part of your class and it's above and beyond. We understand there's emergencies, but in terms of being able to provide compensatory time for things like that, only an emergency basis should it take place. That's what we're saying, not as a standard practice. That's where on page 2, it says, shall receive compensatory time for the receipt of those students.
So will it be hour by hour, like timekeeping?
And see, that's what always becomes the question, right? We've gone down this road before where we've had the conversation of like, so if I get 5 students, is that the same as getting an entire class and covered for a period? And then when it comes to do it proportionally, who's going to keep up with the math and stuff? So simplest thing is make it compensatory, and it's only an emergency purpose. So it shouldn't be happening that often.
Yeah, it's just more of a problem. It's hard, as you know, I'm not telling you something you don't know.
Right.
I think subs are going to be still quite the challenge this coming year. So having no one in the classroom is an emergency, I would think. So if a teacher splits say we split, a principal splits the class the whole day, would the teacher get a whole day of comp time if they had 5 students?
Yes, in this case, yes.
And then if it was an hour, the bookkeeper would enter an hour.
Well, not enter, just because we're not putting in the Skyward.
Right.
Yeah.
However, a
Yeah.
count.
Well, we haven't agreed on that yet, but
Okay.
Right.
I'm just trying to see how it would work.
Right.
Your language. All right, I get it.
okay. And then employee work week, the total amount of time in the employee's work week shall consist of the number of minutes the employee's scheduled workday times 5 days. So it's saying that the workday is 7.5 times 5, and that is what the workday is. So everything that falls outside of that 7.5 is outside the workday. We have teachers that when we start to bring to their attention, they're supposed to be on campus 15 minutes before the workday starts or 30 minutes, and then it's well over the 7.5 hours. Not going to name any names. But at the end of the day, a principal should not be directing someone outside of what contractually is the 7.5 hours. And what's always been a concern with that in terms of certain school sites is the day gets shifted. So we'll go ahead and add 15 more minutes to the beginning of the day instead of like what would be a traditional start at 8 for elementary, end at 3:30 kind of deal. They go to 7:45, which means that the day ends at 3:15. Well, if you do a faculty meeting at the end of the day, then you're going to be definitely going over the 30 minutes that's part of the faculty meeting piece, or you may not even have students on buses and in cars by the time they're supposed to be off the clock. So we just want to make sure that it's understood. It's 7.5 hours and nothing should be communicated to staff that's outside of that. 7.02, employee assignment, general. All professional duties shall be assigned to employees in a fair and equitable manner. And I think there has been some, I want to make sure the intent of this is understood, that we get it on the record, because fair and equitable, go ahead, figure it out. Open to interpretation. So in the fair and equitable, some school sites will do a red dot, blue dot, green dot, different systems to identify students and what their needs are or their gender, and they make class rosters with the names down, they flip it over and they make it as equal as possible, right? Other places, it's, you're really good with behavior problems, I'm gonna give you all the behavior problems. So is that fair and equitable? So that's what I wanna make sure that we have understood, is that fair and equitable means, in every capacity of fair and equitable, means that no one should be saddled with more burden than another teacher. And that when it comes to dealing with students, we shouldn't be putting all the ESE kids in one class and then, or the gifted that sometimes goes in a certain direction, but fair and equitable. Another case would be in high school, some of the same classes as levels will have disparate numbers of who's in which class. So, and I know there's some things that are dealing with scheduling with that, but when it's consistently taking place, then we want to make sure that's fair and equitable.
It's usually, my experience, it's not fair and equitable when someone doesn't like it. And then it works for 100 people, but one person doesn't like it, it's not fair and equitable. So we do the best we can. But I understand, I mean, it could be all professional duties shall be assigned, you know, it's not randomly. I think they try to do, you can't do a perfect equitable job. You can do the best you can. I understand your point is you don't want to pick on a teacher who may always be willing to help. But
So nothing change in language, but making sure that, again, kind of communication.
The intent of the language.
The intent and making sure that we're meeting. Assignments within the workday, employees' activity duty assignments within the workday shall be determined by the site administrator or in cooperation with the shared decision-making council and such, if such exists at the school. And I think the issue that we have in Leon County schools is we call a lot of the same thing, a lot of different names. And so at a lot of schools, it's called site-based decision-making. But then when you talk about it, you say, all our schools are site-based. Okay, yes, because the principal's in charge, but that's not the same as a shared decision-making council. So we like the vernacular in the district to be used properly and that it be called a shared decision-making council so people understand they're supposed to be sharing the decisions at the school if they vote to go ahead and be a part of it. Down to C, assignments beyond the employee's workday and work week. No employee shall be required to stay beyond their school workday or to participate in activities outside their school scheduled work week, except in the case of emergency. We understand that if there's, like, for example, Riley, I think, had a couple of lockdowns because certain things were happening within the community. It's understandable when there's an emergency. We get that part. The idea, though, that, it goes beyond that to just a bunch of things. If the standard workday is 7.5 hours, then it needs to be done in that. I think people need to have their time respected and the contract followed when it comes to that. And because we're talking about professional duties and we said that professional duties could just be anything that gets assigned, that's the reason why number 2 is out as well, because it references these assignments. On 3, page 3, tentatively agreed negatively. In terms of failure to volunteer for extracurricular activities will not negatively impact employees' evaluations. Just as a point of clarification, we understand negatively, but does that mean that everyone's starting at effective and you won't go less than effective if you don't volunteer? Or is that where everyone's highly effective? I'm trying to understand the negative part and what that means when it comes to evaluations, just so that we're all on the same page.
trying to see where it originated. Well, it said the failure under one version, I'll just say you had highlighted the failure to volunteer in extracurricular activities will not impact employees' evaluation. So we had a discussion, will not impact. So we put the word negative because it's certainly not going to be I don't know. We put negative because you wanted it.
Right, but I just want to make sure, because what'll happen is, this is just what happens sometimes, is we talk about it, it gets disseminated and then it gets interpreted. So I just want to make sure whatever our interpretation is that gets shared out is shared interpretation, so that there's no question or ambiguity when it gets called the question. That's all.
Shane, do you have any thoughts on, it looks plain to me?
Explain that to principals. I feel like they'll understand that.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be marked down.
Just meaning, and just that I understand that when it comes to extracurricular stuff, it will not come within the scope of rationale for marking someone down in some way. Okay. We still tentatively agree. So, D1C, again, still irks me there's no 2, but that's okay. The district also may require employees to perform additional compensated assignments. And since this is dealing with activities that go beyond the standard work schedule, work day, work week, work year, at the employee's hourly rate, beyond the work year under the following conditions. And so this goes back to work year. So if someone is asked to teach over the summer, like that's happening right now, and we've had an understanding that was at their hourly rate, it doesn't actually say it. We just want to make sure that it's in the contract as such. And we tentatively agreed to the instructional. And the reason why I highlighted A is because there's been a lot of talk about state and federal mandates, and this talks to the state and federal mandates piece. So the district may also require employees to perform additional compensated assignments.
Is it always their hourly rate on some federal grants?
Not always.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Training rate for trainings during the summer. So that's going to be an issue.
Mhm.
I know some
We
grants
accept all
say
counts.
$20. Some grants say $20 an hour.
Right. Yeah.
He's talking about his under training.
Yeah, what Shane's talking about is under training. I think this was
Yeah, this is.
compensated. This is saying that, required employees to perform additional compensated assignments. It's not, I don't think it's requiring training the way that it's worded, but again.
Okay, so it wouldn't be summer volunteers. That we ask for teachers to volunteer for summer school and we pay them $22 an hour. Some districts have that. I don't know why it's 22. Some grants are $22 an hour.
So you're saying we're going up to 22?
No.
I'm just kidding.
I'm not ready to say that yet. Hypothetically, some districts honestly have a bulk grant, and to get more teachers, they put it at a different rate than hourly rate.
Right. And I guess what it comes down to is this. The reason for the hourly rate portion is this. Everybody understands that there are needs, and teachers will go above and beyond, and they'll sacrifice everything. And then if they start calculating what they're doing, then it's that much that's outside the standard day, that much over the summer. And the thing is, they don't need to have to, it's not a volunteer position. If we value the work that they're doing in any other job, we would pay them what they're worth at doing that job. So we're just asking for the same.
All right.
Page 3 to 4, it's not that we don't have anything for virtual school, it's just, I was under the impression that we were waiting for some information from virtual school. So and maybe it's because of all the awards they're getting right now that they can't do that, but that's okay. I know that it's coming. We just wanted to make sure that you knew that we weren't just skipping over it. In-service activities. And correct me if I'm wrong, Shane, it said individual development plan, but I think we're delivered practice plan now. So I just wanted to make sure that that was corrected. And then because the corrective action plan is a part of Article 10, And it speaks to what in-service maybe someone needs as a corrective action that also be included in there. So there was no ambiguity. And then for the portion that is, or in other appropriate documents, if you could explain what those documents are, we're willing to listen, but these seem to be the ways that you would ask someone to do some additional training for school improvement plan, deliver practice plan, corrective action plans, and mandated as a condition of employment. One of the concerns that we'd like to bring to your attention is the PYP stuff that's going on right now, that there's a lot of, whether it's Hartsfield, W.T. Moore, schools that want to be these pre-IB programs, they're asking a lot of their teachers right now. And there's a different expectation clearly coming from those administrators than what a traditional school would be asking. And so is this hourly rate? Is this at the discretion of the administrator? These are things that we kind of are interested about, because to change the working conditions at a school has to be negotiated.
All right.
I know that we said 30 on B. The reason why it's crossed out is because whatever was done there, it's not necessarily a deletion of B, but we came down from the 30 to 25 an hour. Once again, if you think about it, like the 10% increase in supplements that happened a couple of years ago, that $20 hasn't moved for years. And yes, we want to pay people, but at the same time, for the time that people are putting in, we need to move the needle, or else it just won't get moved. You can just stay right there. The district shall provide required in-service training through the training and education center. That was yours. We accept that within 30 days from. And what we wanted to do is we put back in, just so you know, a similar piece that was there. It's the same exact language, because we do believe that it's important for us to be coordinated and collaborative on what's taking place. It worked. I know that it takes some time in order to do it, but in order to be planned out and have our school sites and district all on the same page, you know, I think it's extremely helpful for us to collectively say, we value this. This is what we know is good, not just as a district, but as a union. And that way we get more buy-in. I'm not saying that there isn't buy-in right now, but the idea is until the district is number one in the state, we got work to do. And we want to make sure that we're a part of that to do whatever needs to be done through that collaboration. In-service funds shall be placed at cost centers. That was deleted on yours. We went back to current contract language. And an in-service schedule and compensation plan shall be determined by the site administrator in cooperation with the shared decision-making council. And if such exists at the school, the plan shall be shared within 30 working days after the school year begins. And again, so as the district plan comes out at the beginning of the year, you're planning, you're making sure things are set in place. There's more coordination. Everybody knows you can set your schedules. It's not surprises along the way, and ensure more people are involved in that. 7.04. I saw your D at the bottom, which said discussion of MOU to be considered in this section. But what we did was we just gave back our language because we didn't know what the discussion was going to be. And we still are very eager to find some, not just what once was and what we want. We want to make sure we're somewhere in the middle, because we do feel that, again, we have this, when we hear your salary, but then the contract says that salary is determined by 7.5 for 5 days. And if that's the case, then that's the salary for the 7.5 for 5 days, and everything outside is uncompensated work. Not sure. Need a little time. Okay, all right. So discussion of MOU to be considered, we're open to whatever that counter is, but you just need to know, what the thought process is. As we've stated, we're more interested in a district-wide, whether at each level, high school, middle school, elementary, otherwise, plan so that there's continuity throughout the district. Because it is not necessarily applied at schools the same way.
Is there gonna be a time when you're planning to have that discussion? At our next one or the one after?
You're talking, and you're referencing comp time, am I correct?
Yes, the discussion of the MOU.
I think for us, if I remember correctly, and the team is here with me, I was referencing, or I'm thinking this is referring back to the fact that we had a settlement and how that would impact this language.
Mhm.
So not necessarily, this is just Dina speaking. This to me doesn't read as we were creating separate plans for each level. That was not my initial. My initial thinking was we've had a settlement dealing with contact time, but our settlement goes forward into the next contract years. So I was looking to see how some of that settlement would be explained in this language.
Gotcha.
That's what I was, but I could be, you all,
No, that's right.
that's what I meant.
All right, well, now we understand what that is, and if you
Because
notice, we-
it says here, all unused comp time will lapse. Well, that's not what our agreement was, right? Excuse me.
Mhm. Correct. It won't lapse. It gets to be carried over until 20, so we just have to make sure that.
For the length of the contract?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's
we just
why
have to-
this
That's why
kind-
we.
that's why this language really mirrors what LESPA has in terms of, and other unions that have come to agreements along these lines with the LCS.
Wait, say that again, Scott. Say that one more time, please.
So 4 and 5 are directly out of LESPA.
Right, the less
So-
are clocking in, they're FSLA, they're non-exempt.
So to that point, question, if we're salaried and the day is a 7.5 hour day for 5 days, and we're saying we're not going to compensate over 7.5 hours for 5 days, then you don't need to know that we're at school for 7.5 hours if we've done our job in the time that we've done it, because we're salaried.
No.
So if I don't have to show up,
No.
I'm just, so my thing is, you want people to be there for a specific amount of time for a specific amount of pay.
Because you're professional, like I am. I'm expected to be at work 8 hours a day.
But in terms of salary wise, it's like one or the other. It's like we're dipping out of two different things. We got an hourly rate for people that determines their salary, which is based off a 7.5 hour day, 5 days a week, 196 days a year. But then we want to call them salaried, and we don't want to give anything more above that.
They're
That means we
exempt.
can
There's a
continue.
difference between hourly and
I
exempt.
understand.
They're exempt, which means you get to work forever like me, ever.
Mhm.
Your hours at work are one thing. You're not hourly like LESPA's hourly.
So, but as a salaried individual,
Mhm.
right? What you're saying, or what we're hearing from the other side, is that this is the set amount, and we can ask as much out of that as we want. And then if it goes over and we split classes and we ask you to cover and we have to do this and this and this and this, that's still gonna be the set amount, regardless of what is asked of.
No,
And I want to make sure that that's what the reason for the compensatory time piece is to say that we value the time that you put in elsewhere, because that time is what often will take away from other things. Family, second job you got to get to, third job you got to get to. So
okay. I just think you just can't move. You can't consider LESPA and 1010 comp time. It's a poor use of the word comp time. It's not
It
comp
is.
time.
It's not, we really should get away from that. We really should get away from that language
And get
because,
to hourly rate.
no, we should really get rid of the concept of comp time because you're not eligible technically legally to earn comp time. It should be
If you
board
enter
time.
an
It should
agreement,
be,
legally you are.
it should be
if
board
there's an
time.
agreement.
It should be district time. It should not, the word comp is it gives the wrong connotation because it sets it up for things like this.
Well,
And I'm sorry, could I say
Yeah.
something? I think just to kind of share a little bit of our perspective as a teacher, or SLP working at the schools. What Scott has explained on our behalf, and I know you guys understand and you hear it, you all have, various backgrounds, educator backgrounds, you get it.
Mhm.
But, teachers are exhausted. Teachers are working up to 3 jobs in some instances. Teachers are choosing, not to have kids because they can't afford to have a kid. These are real issues that teachers are facing. And we are constantly asked to work more than we can fit into our 7.5 hours. So whatever it's called, comp time, all the other things you just offered up, I don't think from my perspective, just as me personally, I don't care what it's called, and if we're expected to complete a certain amount of work and duties, but we cannot do that within the 7.5 hours, it still falls back on us as educators and professionals to get the job done no matter what. But if we're not able to earn anything for our time, that does not support teachers and feed into our morale and feed into feeling supported. And it does not help recruit and retain teachers, which in turn makes our students suffer because they're not having consistency with their teachers. And so it's all tied in together. And that's from our perspective why this is an important issue too, because it impacts everything. It impacts the teacher morale and it directly impacts the students too, because we can't do it all in our 7.5 hour days. And I think it can feel frustrating and unsupportive and a little disrespectful sometimes to feel that we just have to deal with it.
And I don't think, Sarah, that anybody's ever said that. There's not enough money in God's created earth to pay teachers what they're worth. I don't think us saying that we don't like the concept of using the verbiage of comp time or paying teachers for additional time that are rendered or service to the district or to students that they serve. What I was referencing is the actual use of that word, because legally there are connotations to it. You all are not required to clock in and clock out. Your comp time is not kept annually and allowed and paid out after a certain value that it accrues in the system. Legally, through the Fair Labor Standards Act, there are requirements placed on earning comp time for people who fit that description of that type of employee. You all don't fit that description. So legally, if we're using that terminology, we're holding you all responsible for that and the district. So when I say I don't agree with this, I'm saying I don't necessarily agree with the title. I'm not saying that we don't think that you should be compensated for what you do.
For earning it.
Or earning it, because we're not saying you're not. I'm saying legally, that verbiage is not what's supposed to be used with someone who is exempt. Because with it, that means there are some responsibilities that you didn't have to take on. And that's just not, so you're not. So that's all I'm saying. And I think you said you didn't mind if it was board time or whatever. I'm just saying legally, when you use that, it lends itself.
And thank you for that, because that was a really helpful and important clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
so as Sarah said, whatever it's called, we are for the concept. And so whether it's called compensated leave, which we've seen definitions for, used accrued leave, whatever accrued time, doesn't matter. It's just the intent and concept is what is of concern right now. And what we've done in many places in the contract that are proposal, we've removed the hourly rate pay and just gone with compensatory time with the idea that this is how we would be able to use it. So we'll meet next time and listen to your count.
All right.
7.05A1, faculty meetings shall be limited to one per month scheduled in advance. I think the issue that has taken place is one a month is understood. The question though is that there are certain places where there are multiple faculty meetings at a school site for different levels of individuals, maybe years of service or whatnot, or there are multiple meetings for those that have extended day versus extra period versus the standard. And so when it comes down to understanding one per month in advance, I guess the intent of this is to, the site administrator shall make efficient use of the electronic communications, timely disseminate information as well as items requiring employee action. So there are certain things that happen in a faculty meeting that could be emailed. And if the concern is that are people receiving it, then to send it as read receipt or some way that verifies that it was received, so it doesn't have to extend the faculty meeting any longer than it already is. But just as a use of time wisely. The other part on page 6 speaks to no more than 2 faculty meetings per semester can exceed the standard or extended workday by more than the one half hour. There's language in the contract that says if you give prior notice, you can go over 1.5 hours or that half hour of the day. Well, if a site administrator develops a schedule at the beginning of the year and gives it a pre-planning, they've done it in advance, and now every meeting is longer than the half hour. So in order to use time efficiently, now I'm not sure how it works at all school sites, but usually dismissal takes place. The meeting happens with 15 minutes still left in the school day. You get an extra 30 minutes to extend it that half hour longer. It's a 45-minute faculty meeting. If people want to vote at that point in time to continue it on, they vote at that time. And if you want to make 2 of them that are going to be longer than that, then you can do 2, but it's a limited per semester. It just, again, if the intent is to not exceed more than half an hour, then if you set out a schedule where every meeting exceeds half an hour, then you give them prior notice. We'd like some limitations on that. Employees working standard workday shall not have to wait until employees working extended day and teaching in an extra period to complete their workday to participate in a faculty meeting. The site administration shall schedule a duplicate faculty meeting for staff working extended day and extra period. This already happens at one of our high schools because it respects the time of the people that are already off the clock. But what tends to happen at other ones is you're not working the extra period, so we're gonna wait till everybody else finishes, and then your people are having to stick around longer than they normally would have to at the school site uncompensated.
So they would wait an hour for that teacher to finish and then have a faculty meeting?
Yeah.
Do they have a planning period that hour?
Well, like, so for example, if you're 7.5 hours, like you can leave at 2:30, but the 6th period usually gets out at like 1:50, 1:50, something like that. So people that are teaching 7th period, we have to wait around until 7th period is over. With the years that we've had 7th period, and now we're about to have 7th period again. And then that's when we can have a faculty after 7th period. So then at that point, if the faculty meeting then is longer than a half an hour, then it just ends up, but that's every single time. It's not like we don't have 7th period some days. Like it's gonna be every single time.
Okay, I think I get it.
Okay, rules and policies. Employees shall be notified by the site administrator or immediate supervisor of new, and that should say policies in there, excuse me, within 5 working days of, actually, new, yeah. poorly worded, but the intent is after something gets passed, you notify people within 5 days of anything that's adopted or superintendent implemented. The issue is that sometimes policies happen in the middle of the year. And if it pertains to what instructional staff are doing, then they just need to know about it. We want to make sure that they get it. So we're not asking for the centralized place on site. We just want to make sure there's notification of changes as the school year goes on. 707. So anything that's left in red, we'll tentatively agree to. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But
So let me go back to just 706B, because every month, a lot of boards, they renew and adopt new policies that may have nothing to do with teachers.
right.
So do we want to?
So if it deals with instructional staff, that's the intent.
Okay.
They don't need to know about construction.
I mean, we could,
That's what-
we'll probably say, please check the website. All right.
The website's not really easy to access on policies.
I am told that it may not be up to date
No.
on a couple things.
Oh.
Hmm.
Ruh-roh.
On that note, and it's not like just random, but you know, like FSA scores were set out. It's so random.
I'm like, wait, what?
On our website are old and they're not shut down. So like you can still, like if you Google something, it pops up and it's like 2-3 years old. Doesn't it get shut down?
You mean on our website?
Yeah.
Yes.
So like the
Because-
1617 Turk leads is easily accessible.
Yeah. Like I had parents emailing me saying FSA scores are out and they're not. I'm like, okay, so then I looked on there and sent me the link and sure enough, it says FSA scores are out and it's like 3 years old and it doesn't have a date. Or at least when web pages are done, say updated as of or last updated something because everybody.
Thanks, Random. We'll get that done.
But it's necessary.
Right, right, no,
No, I
When I'm
agree.
avoiding text
No.
coming my way.
she's really a pre-K teacher.
Sorry,
No.
No, our website, no, our law firm website's so old, I have hair on my picture. So it's like 10 years old.
You just submitted that one last week, to be honest.
It was a yearbook picture from high school.
Yeah,
Or if you search it on LCS, sometimes it'll pop up too.
No, it will.
Even on.
so Vicky has it, have, she'll explain.
2 or 3 times.
I know, and then you're
And
like,
I call IT and say,
uh-huh.
y'all, I asked y'all to take this down. And you go and look and they have. And it's a thing on Google when you're Googling stuff, researching stuff on the internet. They can't take it down off of that.
Right, yeah.
And so it's still able to be accessed
I
if
know.
somebody goes and
Yeah,
Googles
that's
it,
awesome.
even though we've got it.
Off.
If
Off
they
on our side.
Googled it before,
Right.
because it's in their cache. So no matter what,
Right.
if it's in their cache, they Googled it 2 years ago, you had cleaned out your cache.
Well, can we change the cash to comp time?
Yeah.
Bring us all back.
So you have to delete it all in order to do that.
Okay, I'm so sorry, refocus. Sorry. Go,
I love it, I love it. She's like the random kid. I had a doctor's appointment.
It's terrible.
I always
But I
call them
get you back.
special case.
Special case.
But I'll get you back.
I love it though. It's all good. So yeah, just the instructional stuff. When it comes to 7.7 school facilities, we accept area. E, the results of such inspection shall be shared with employees and LCTA electronically or via email. The issue, we did not go with monthly, we went with your regular maintenance. But then when it comes to regular maintenance, how is anyone supposed to know that something's been maintained if there's no communication of that maintaining space? And so that I'll just, as a side note, there are a lot of teachers that use air purifiers and things this past year. And, there may be filters that are being changed, but I don't know how long it's been since the air ducts have been cleaned out. So Doesn't matter if you start changing the filters on something that hasn't been added. So there's still a lot of particulates that are still getting in the classrooms. And so teachers just want to know, is the space that I'm working in, where the students are that I care about, is this a safe place? Is it being maintained? You say regular, we're okay with regular, but we'd like to communicate. G, TA, J, tentative agreement. And then for KLM, they are the similar things we've already talked about. But we just didn't want to forget, because we did have TNIS come in and share, but yet we don't have a resolution to some of the things. And so until we kind of get to that, whatever that is, the requests that we still have are there, because charters are of issue for our middle school and high school. And we know that there's some in a warehouse, but is there enough for everybody? So that folks, and yes, we do understand students can charge their phones, but they do that because they're communicating with their friends and the stuff they want to do. You know, when you don't bring a laptop or a Chromebook charge, probably just, it's not a priority that you have. So we still want to keep instructional continuity. In the 7.08, district shall maintain classrooms, other learning areas in school district facilities in a clean and working condition conducive and effective to teaching and learning. This kind of goes back to maintenance, cleaning. I know that we've had the discussion. There are teachers that clean their own bathrooms. There are teachers that buy their own supplies, whether air freshener or otherwise, Clorox wipes, things like that. And even though the superintendent has increased monies for school sites and things, that there are sites where people get, you know, one canister of wipes and a couple other things, and that's, if you need something, come back. We're just asking that it be maintained so that the teacher can focus on the class, on the teaching and the students. G, the district shall regularly monitor indoor air quality and redress issues. We've simplified the language to be how you choose to do it, but that it will be done and monitored. On page 7, to not be required to tentatively agree on whatever's in the red, and district, the rationale of having district personnel come in as well. The one thing that we do want to make sure, as far as observations are concerned, is we have, you know, there are coaches that come in that are part of the instructional bargaining unit, and in Article 13, they're not supposed to be doing observation, but they give their notes to the principal. So they're then being observed indirectly through another person. And so whenever it comes to evaluation, it should be coming directly, primary source from the principal, from what they see. And then anecdotal notes, secondary information, opinions of others should not be clouding what they see when they go in the classroom. So 713 ESE, and with that, the top section that is in red is crossed out, but it is also a part of what's in A and B, so it's not necessarily that it's deleted. We will put it back in, but also with a little more A through E, and so we never really had a response to the ESE language, and so we put it back in to get that response.
For CD&E? For CD&E?
For CD, yeah. And do you want to speak to any of those?
Random, no.
No, I have a puppy.
That's nice.
So do I. So do I, and we'll try, you can have them.
Another random.
Yeah, and the kid raised said, mine.
My puppy,
My puppy peed on the floor last night.
mine died.
Mine died. The fish died. Okay, so, the main things, if you want to go over service providers and community, but not limited to OT, PT, school psychology should not be required to complete any extra duties, including but not limited to morning duty, bus duty, lunch duty, recess duty, or dismissal duties to ensure protective planning. That's happening at some schools. D, planning days, in addition to school scheduled planning periods outlined in 7.01 ESC, employees and service providers shall be granted one additional planning day each quarter at the discretion of the employee for the purpose of completing ESC-related paperwork tasks such as IEP, progress notes, scheduling meetings. If we follow the contract as is, there is no room in our day to write IEPs, and just in order to receive comp time and curiosity, as my team, I range anywhere from 30 to 75 extra hours, depending on the position outside of our school day. IEP meetings, if an IEP or NTSS, PST meeting extends beyond the employee's contract hours, the employee shall be paid at their hourly rate for the entire duration of time outside of the length of the day specified in their contract. If meetings are scheduled before or after school teacher workday, any teacher required to attend will be given at least 5 work days in advance to every extent possible. And that's just courtesy. I mean, most PSC teachers do that. That's really for the regular ed teachers. But all the things that are required of ESC teachers are not possible within the school contract day as it is. And I can provide documentation across the county. And I accept all counties.
So good.
I would,
So good, Patty. Even your randomness.
And so, and not that it's a part of this, but we do know that there's also areas within the supplements or critical shortage areas that could be used to address the needs of our ESC teachers for the time that they spend doing their work. Pre-planning wise, what I tried to do here is, because if it shifts from 5 to 7, then understandably more in service, I divide it, it equates 0.41. I know you did. I know Shane, you did a good job. So it's like you knew I was going to check. So basically, it's just saying that 5 to 7, and if there are 5 planning days, it would be not to exceed 12. And then if it was 7, not to exceed the 17. And that way it specifies when you would get the hours. Because it was a hyphen, and it was like, it could be either. And so. And then on number 9, of course, yeah. I get it. And I know that we're sharing back the documents and stuff, and I just want to, I've numbered the pages this time, because it's just, I know sometimes it gets a little
Keep us
hard
from
to
getting lost.
follow along.
No, thank you. This
Thank
is
you.
very clear.
Thanks.
I took notes. So the next one's Article 13. I'll keep my copy this time. Thank you. There you go. All right. And just to start off, we understand that it's minutia. In definitions in the front of the contract, 1.02, it does speak that employee, what an employee is. So And since the title of 13 is employee evaluation, we figure employee would be a better word choice than teacher within it, since we represent more than just classroom teachers. And everybody is also moving to the LEADS platform. All of our SLPs and OTs, PTs, they've developed it so that it mirrors it, and that you can use that one, so that we're not using Daniel's anymore. So we tentatively agreed to the top part. That just clarifies, and then also says student performance measures shall not be tied to state and national standardized tests at the employee's discretion. And then from there, it's just changes. And then on years of teaching, years of service, because if somebody is an SLP, they may not have been doing that, or if they're a reading coach rather than teaching. On page 2, one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that when someone was hired, because there was no time certain for a hire of when they would be, that within 30 days of their hire that they would be informed of the LEADS platform. You know, there are cases where, you know, we understand the year's going on, everybody hits the ground running, and there's just not it's not an understood process for our new hires, especially if they're from out of state or whatever. You know, we want to make sure that no one gets surprised, and then we can avoid whatever kind of issues that may come up at the end of the school year. Down at the bottom again, just some minor things. Number 6, the administrator and the employee shall schedule a conference to discuss the administrator's observation as soon as practical after an observation, and with 10 instructional days if problems and difficulties are noted. It only spoke to the formal, and if somebody only has one formal that happens at the end of the year sometime in March, then that's the only time someone's gonna have to, when we work through TERT, the most important thing that's always talked about is instructional coach is what the principal is. And that's their thing. Keep the learning going, get the students where they need to be, support the teachers. And so what we're doing is we're just trying to say, if there's a problem, let's not let it persist. And within 10 working days, have a conversation with that person where you talk about those things. So even in the comments that have been received by some teachers or employees within the evaluation system, they're not very specific. It's just like, I saw you doing this. Well, what should I be doing? Like, what, I mean, so if the idea is to coach them up, then you have to have that conference and that conversation. So that's the reason, the rationale for number 6 and the changes that we provided.
Is that not for formal? Is that for any observation? Explain.
Yes, so like when you do a walkthrough, which is what's now talked about, I come through as an administrator. The way it is right now is I do my walkthrough, I see something and I put something at the beginning, and I could just send you an email and you get a ding and that's it. But it's not necessarily as dedicated to a, here's what I see, this is what I need you to do. And to clear up any ambiguity, because what happens sometimes is the evaluation gets left open. So you may have gotten an email, but what was done through the observation, and then it gets closed after the non-reappointment. Well, what was the time from where it was open to where it ended? And if it has the conversation that's part of them, you know that you're providing that instructional coaching or whatever it is that you need to for based off the evaluation.
Okay.
Again, employee instead of teacher. That's most of what those items are. On number 10, page 3, you're going to see pursuant to these, the rating and feedback provided through observations may. we use may, will, shall. We don't use the word should much in the contract. So rather than to have a word of consistency, we figured, we believe that may is a better choice. And then on 13, employees shall be given an opportunity to provide. They may choose not to provide opportunity. Like those about, like, tell us what you did on domain 4. They just need to be provided the opportunity. That doesn't mean that they have to complete it and give it back. If they choose not to, that's upon them. We're just saying, if there's something to go into domain 4, it should be provided so they can be taken into consideration no more than 15 working days prior to reappointment. E and F is just teacher employee. H is agreed upon language of the 13.02. It does not mean that they will have a contract. It has nothing to do with annual contract reappointment, but we agreed to it and it seemed to be working. So we're not sure why we can't continue. Plus, if we adopt this new transfer period window, then that means that in order to get those positions filled and everything the way that it's been, that 4 weeks prior to would definitely need to be in place, because even if you don't, and there's a teacher transfer day, you need to know who was not reappointed and transfer in order to be able to schedule those individuals for that transfer day. So if we wait to the last day of the school year, when are you doing transfer day? 3 weeks later? So annual contract renewal decisions will be made no later than 4 weeks prior to the end of the school year, and after all required evaluations have been completed. That's similar intent to everything that we've done before in the past. So again, if it's in red, we've already tentatively agreed to it. And
Can we go back? I don't know where Shane stepped out for a minute, but I thought there was some conversation on page 1
okay,
in letter A. I thought there was discussion, and I could be wrong. That's why I was waiting for him to come back. But discussion about the student performance measure shall not be tied to state or national standardized testing as at employee's discretion. I thought there was some discussion as to why he wanted that not to be.
take out
As employee's discretion.
So it should be, it's whatever you guys sent us, and I just,
Yeah, I think I'll just take
Well,
credit for it. I don't know.
It doesn't
There was
matter.
a typo.
yeah, it's
There
No, I
was
just wanted
a
to make sure
typo.
it was something. So when you said everything in red, I wanted to make sure that.
Yeah,
the intent of it. If we have to
Sure.
clean up the grammar, we clean up the
Okay.
grammar.
Oh, that's fine. It's just, is it
not
grammar?
grammar. It's not grammar.
Well-
I think Shane did not see someone's edit that said at the employee's discretion.
Right.
So I don't think we want to delete that from our counter dated June 15th.
Oh, so it wasn't supposed to be a part of your.
Yeah.
No, I don't think
Yes.
that's why when you say everything in red was agreed upon, I'm like, I don't remember
No.
that being.
We never got a chance to come back and clean up on aisle 9
Right.
because we had a
Yeah.
I
lot of
thought that's what
cleanups.
this copy was.
Well, this was aisle at 7,
This is
8,
the- like,
and 6.
right, but this was great. If this is the only one that we goofed up on since what we fixed, but
And to be honest, guess what? If you want to say at the employee's discretion, just go ahead. We can agree right now and take it out if that's the intent of what you want to do, because
he wanted to
if
take
the
out
whole
at
purpose
the.
is that
Right.
not to be tied to state, national standardized
Right,
testing.
Right,
Right.
Grammar.
And period.
period.
Right.
So standardized test.
So they,
It's a favorable line for both
Yeah.
of us.
exactly.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't want us to leave the table and it not. Okay.
No, thank you for going back and taking a look at it.
Do you,
There is one last thing, unless there's more on Article 13 that you have questions.
just on, do you see a difference in your 13? Sorry, let me get back to, I guess it's page 3, your 13, which is
Article 7.
D13.
Article 7.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no, sorry, Article 13,
Okay.
Article 13.
page 3,
Page
Page
3.
three.
There's page numbers.
number 13.
Number 13.
It's taken
And
out.
our 13 way you were saying it, like the employees shall be given the opportunity, and we say employees may provide input.
Right.
Similar, like we're saying they may provide input to main for.
Well, the reason why we went with shall be provided an opportunity is that our discussion of the way it was may be provided, that it was at the discretion of the administrator that they may or may not
Oh,
be
okay.
able to provide.
Okay, that's not what we meant. I don't think.
Well,
Right.
but that's how we took it. That's why we said that they just shall be provided an opportunity. They don't have to take advantage of it, but at least it's there. So I think the intent is the same. It's just
Got it.
the way we read it. We just want to ensure that they were given the opportunity.
Not the intent.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we're,
Which one? Wait, Shane's saying something now.
I'm sorry, hang on.
We're not on that one anymore. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
That's what you get paid for.
we were
It's
talking
okay.
about your dogs when you left.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, appreciate the opportunity to clarify. And this piece is brand spanking new. But it is, I think, of mutual interest to both sides. We'll see what you think. This is a memoranda of understanding for instructional staff not recognized by the $1,000 that the governor is providing
Yeah.
for everybody. So the intent of it is just to mirror what the governor has done, so that those people that are left out in the instructional bargaining unit through the ESSER funds shall be able to receive the $1,000.
There's, as of today, there's a robust debate between the federal Department of Education, who wrote a letter to our the Department of Education saying there's no such thing as a $1,000 bonus under this program.
Which is why it's not called a bonus, it's disaster relief.
Right, and they're saying that's not
I
right.
know, but
So what I think will happen is we have to give the names they want. There'll be a fight for God knows how long, but just so everyone knows, we don't have that money here.
Mhm.
And it will now be probably a federal deck action or something in federal court, where the feds come in and say, you can't do this. They also offered some tax advice. You probably saw the memo.
I've seen it all. Yep.
Yeah.
Shared it out with everybody too, so. Not that everyone read it, because it was
Yeah,
only 3 hours. Well, some people did.
Yeah, my phone blew up. It was a tax firm giving tax advice to the Department of Education that said, this is kind of how we interpret,
Mhm.
this is not wages. And so we don't have to take out FICA. I don't know anyone yet who will fall on that limb yet.
Mhm.
So,
Well, even if they take out the taxes, we're just trying to make people whole that are a part of the instructional bargaining unit that were, it was an oversight, because people that aren't a part of public education and know what happens in public schools don't know who's doing
In
the
the
work.
classrooms.
So they say things that they think sound good in a newspaper or for media or maybe a presidential run. And then, at the end of the day, you leave out people and they feel slighted.
no, this is best and brightest times 5.
Right.
Now that to me, Sarah, is what's very disheartening. This.
And not to mention our support staff.
Yes.
I mean, that was a slight, like they
Transportation.
weren't here during
Right.
COVID.
But as we are often
Food service.
told, we do not bargain for those groups, so we didn't.
No, we're
No,
just
I
saying,
know.
we're just making.
No, we're talking about morale.
Yeah, we're talking about morale
We would
and
love
sheep.
to push that across the table, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No.
We're just saying overall, this is not.
It was a squirrel moment on their part.
We're,
Right. No, puppy.
I'm just gonna, Kim is not here.
Right.
You've heard me say, we have a FTE issue this year more than we have ever had. So we will bring this off to the board. The board obviously in the past tried to do this. There are some boards I know that are doing this, and then some boards I know that can't afford to do this, that want to do this. We'll bring your ask. I predicted your ask. It's not unreasonable. It's going to come down to first closing our this year's budget and then starting our July budget.
I hear what you're saying about the FTE issue, so that we have reasonable understanding of what the district is dealing with. Can Kim be at our next bargaining session to explain that
I will request that.
and where the budget is and kind of what the district is dealing with?
And if I had known, in all fairness, that you were going to potentially share this, I would have asked her to come tonight. But when it deals with things that are not necessarily, I try to keep people, so I'm not exhausting everybody. If it doesn't pertain to them, and this is more school administrative, I did not, but I will ask her for the next one.
Okay.
No problem.
I think we might need her for the next two.
But we may not. I mean, I'll have to we'll first have to ask the board
Yeah,
whether Kim has whether we have the authority to have a debate, but we certainly can give you, well, I can't say that because every CFO right now is trying to end the year. And it's not just June 30th, it's all the receipts that keep coming in. It's the worst time of the year. They all yell at me and they have a new budget in July. You know it, you've seen it every year. It's the worst time in the world for CFO. However, I think we can, and we have for another group, explain the overall State of the Union of how we were funded this year. But we certainly understand the ask.
Mm-hmm. There's that now.
I think we have
We're told 36%.
Oh, no, yeah, we know that.
So that's all the information we have to share this week.
so we'll come back with our counter. What I need to do, in all fairness, I think we had projected out, Scott, I'm not sure if I'd already sent you dates, because what I tried to do is get on Leonard's schedule. I think was this the last
This
official?
is the last.
Okay, so I will, in good faith, reach out to Carly tomorrow.
I have July 4th and 5th
You do?
open.
Okay, all right. Well, guess what? I'm not going anywhere, Leonard. What are we
We can
doing?
bring fireworks.
I'll bring the cooler. We can sit here and hash it out.
We probably could get a lot.
I'm
of
walking
time.
your puppies.
I'm sure we could.
No. Oh, I just have a question. You know, you mentioned like loss of FTE. I personally know that there's a lot of kids that leave the district. Is there a something in place to like an exit interview as to why you're leaving the district? Are we not like advertising? Because if they're leaving the district sometimes from elementary to middle or middle to high school, are we really doing any research on why they're leaving us?
Yes,
Yeah, we're
As much as
trying.
we're a
The
service
district is-
industry, we're also
we're
we have
competing.
a lot of competition now, and not that the competition is better or equal or whatever, but I think it'd be interesting to see the trend of where kids are leaving and why they're leaving, and the ESC kids that are leaving, and they're coming back at certain points and leaving at certain points and from certain schools. I'd like to see that, and in order to avoid some of this FTE loss. In addition to whatever craziness happened this year, I understand, but I think there's a lot of kids leaving the school that we need to ask
I
why.
think we have a
And we
unique,
know why, but I think the district needs to.
Oh, we're working on that. I'm gonna connect you with Dr. Gale.
I think our charter schools are doing well
And your advertisement.
and our private schools are doing well. I think Florida Virtual is doing well. All of these things.
The Hope
In
Scholarship.
Leon County, I remember when Merle left, when I last bargained with Merle, he said it was the first year we were flat.
And what do you mean?
Meaning no additional families coming to Leon County.
Okay.
In his 1,000 years here, it was like he was really stressed of the fact that the population was changing. Like you see folks like my mom moving in at 85, there's tons of senior centers up and there's tons of older communities, tons of college kids that we're not getting the families.
Trying to turn it just 2.0.
And then they also too raised for many of us, unless you're really paying attention, they raised the base for the Hope Scholarship.
Mhm.
So it used to be like, I think it was 60 grand and they raised it to 100. So if you're a household bringing in $100,000 and you feel like you're not getting,
Something else.
yes, so they up the ante so that persons who are a little bit more can then say, I want to access this and make a decision. So but Dr. Gail and I mentioned her name sincerely because we've been talking about this in leadership and we've been talking about reaching out to find out like where's my families are. And I think it's even more evident since COVID because when everybody was shut down and sat home, there were other
Options.
yeah. And so,
And all of a sudden they try them out, they're like, ooh.
yeah. And so now you're, losing 1,200 to 1,500 kids is huge. And
Mhm.
each kid is we would receive almost $8,000.
Yeah.
So that is a lot of money as it relates to supporting schools and instruction. And so, but yes, I know that they're working on that and doing advertisements and looking at websites to make sure that things are easily accessible and people can research schools and find information without like getting old pictures, old marquees, not the right teachers' faces, so we're doing some things, but I'll connect you with her because that is good because you're an advocate for that, to share out.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I ran into someone and more kids are leaving from certain grade levels to certain schools. And I was just curious if you guys were aware.
Will Jessica Lowe be joining us next time also?
Say it again, dear.
Leon Virtual? Will they be joining us next time also?
I will ask them for yes, I will ask. Okay.
Yeah, we're requesting that they're here so we can get some things.
Okay. That ends our bargaining session for today.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I guess that means that tells you where the MOU is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I apologize. I apologize.
But no, I think that kind of tells it. Yeah, all right. So complete and total utter rejection.
Denied?
Yes, there's not a desire
From the board.
by the board to enter into a COVID MOU for this summer. As all things change, as I listen to the board meeting, there's various ideas about COVID that may come back to you. But I have no authority now for a summer school MOU.
Well, our counter is mandatory masks. I'm just kidding.
Now, I sat,
No, you have some people walk out. I don't know. Some people may get up and walk out. You don't have a quorum.
I sat through the original mandatory mask in Suwannee County where there was 150 people in a tiny boardroom.
Right.
Demanding it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And it was difficult because I was sitting there without a mask with 100 people in the room. This was in August at a different time. So I got out my mask, but it's a difficult issue.
Well, just that, we will be having a community conversation based on the ESSER funds for the phase 3 at the end of August. And we would love to do it in a very collaborative way so that as far as engaging DAC and TAC, and, the student groups, principals, administration, what they see their needs, their schools, as well as teachers and parents, to get a collaborative look at where the needs may be, so that when it comes to spending those funds, that there's some consensus on priorities. And if there are any priorities for the district, we invite you out to come and share those priorities of what you think needs to be a part of that, just so that people are aware of it and we're communicating.
Okay.
Yeah, I still, I don't know, we're still waiting to get, how can we, what is appropriate under SR2? I mean, that's still a mystery. The American Rescue, do you have any, is your side given any direction whether that's even this year?
Mhm.
It's our understanding that yes, but it should be at least by the end of the calendar year phasing in.
Okay.
And that,
But not this summer.
but not this summer.
No, I
but-
mean, I think this calendar year is not even,
Mhm.
no, school year, maybe January, but
Right.
yeah, it's
Much in the same way that anything was done with the half-cent penny sales tax. There were billboards up about what it was going toward.
right.
So, I mean, it's the same concept of what are we gonna be doing for our schools, facilities, educational programs. So,
Cleaning air ducts.
but that's probably one thing that's on the list, maybe. I don't
Deep
know.
cleaning.
I clean our air filter once a year, whether it needs it or
That's
not.
the
Clean your air filter?
For your ducks.
I'm joking.
Oh,
Nice.
I'm like, I will give you my husband's card so that you can call him when your AC breaks.
Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm terrible about it. When we moved in, this guy had a monthly chart with checked boxes and
Right.
dates. And I'm like, golly, I wish I could do that. I just forget until it makes a noise.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't. You have a child with asthma, you go to the breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah, they start coughing.
Thank you all. This ends bargaining for
So-
July 1. I will get
Leonard.
dates tomorrow. I will reach out to Carly Duquette.
We
and have
found
Veronica
out
reach out
through
with.
the SR3 fund. It will be disseminated in December 2021.
Would I view that as it'll be given to the governor?